farming. And I'm joined by the co-organiser of the Farmers Rally, Olly Harrison, who has a farm up near Liverpool.
That's right, yeah.
What's your acreage, Olly, as we're speaking in farming terminology?
Well, 350 acres is owned, although there's a mortgage on some of it, and then we farm about 1,400 acres.
All right, dairy? Oh.
No, all cereals, all combinable crops.
Oh,
so wheat, barley, beans, oilseeds.
Oh, breadbasket of England, your farm, right? OK. So, look, you organised this rally, I think, not expecting that many people to turn up.
No, it was very difficult to get people. We wanted people to register, so we had an idea of numbers to tell the Met of how big a space we'd need, and people were a bit nervous about registering, thinking that they were going to be on some database somewhere.
Yeah, sure.
So we were trying to gather well, hold on, 25% seem to be registering, so we think we're going to be around 40-odd thousand, which we think we had over that now.
Amazing. And actually, it does seem to be really cutting through with the public. We've got a petition now calling for a general election on the back of this controversy. Let's just put to you what the Prime Minister has said about this, and you can perhaps clarify whether you think he's telling the truth or not. He said, for a typical case, which is parents with a farm they want to pass on to one of their children, by the time you've taken into account not only the exemption for the farm property itself, but also the exemption for spouse to spouse and then parent to child, it's £3 million before any inheritance tax will be payable. Is that right? Because I've been hearing in the media over the course of the last few weeks since the budget, people talking about £1 million being the threshold, that farmers are being dragged into this new inheritance tax.
Yeah, so let's just go back to basics. So you've got agricultural property relief, which is £1 million. And then what they're trying to say is if you're married, which some people aren't, or they're widowed, you can combine another $1 million with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And then you've got some business property relief as well, which is your tractors and your machinery. And they're saying in the right circumstances, you can get to nearly 3 million. But you've probably got more chance of winning the lottery than meeting that criteria.
Sure.
Equally, the land all has to be in the right place at the start before the budget. The other thing as well that's very complicated here is farms have a significant value, but they are businesses. It's not like when a parent dies and leaves the house to the children that don't need it because they've already got their own house. A farm is an asset that works. It provides food. It's a business. It has a high value, yes, because we're in Britain and they're not making any more land. So the tax that they want us to tax is at the rate. If you think the average farm, we'll have to work on an average year. The average farm maybe will make around 40,000 a year in a good year. And when I say that,
I mean, that's not much. I mean, the minimum wage is what, 28,000, I think, at the moment or something.
And there might be 3 family members working on that farm. And generally as well, when a farm gets passed on, it's the son or the daughter that's been doing the work for the last 30 years as well. Well, now they're at risk of the tax bill being far higher than what the farm could actually afford to pay. So when you have to then sell off a chunk of that farm, you'll then have to pay a capital gains tax as well as the inheritance tax bill.
So it's a double tax whammy.
Yeah, and it's not a loophole. That's the other misconception. It was brought in because farms were getting broken up and they were worried about food production. I mean, we've just seen the guy then talking about, national security and stuff like that. Well, if we can't feed ourselves, it's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah, of course it is. We've got to import more food that we don't want to do. We don't know what conditions any of the meat or indeed the dairy have been produced under. We've got warnings in the papers today that it could prompt land sales, presumably for development. So our green and pleasant land could now be concreted over because people can't afford the agricultural land. We've also got a threat, we seem, to farm shops. Your good old-fashioned farm shop.
Yeah, and the other thing as well that's come out of this rally, if you imagine we were the catalyst of all the farmers coming together, we've had the hospitality industry, we've had the road haulage industry, all these sort of big family businesses fall under the same category. A lady in our hotel has a friend that has a factory, employs 200 people. It's worth about 60 million. They've got 20 million in a trust, but there's a 40 million chunk that'll have a tax bill. The business will not survive that, so it will shut. So that's manufacturing lost and 200 jobs.
From Labour's perspective, they're basically saying that they had to crack down on wealthy individuals buying up farms in order to avoid inheritance tax. You've got some sympathy with that position, although you've pointed out to me off air, we quickly cribbed on it, that Dan Needle, who is, I would say, a sort of left-leaning economist, he works for the Tax Policy Associates Limited, has basically done some number crunching. And he's saying that the budget hits farmers too hard and tax avoiders too lightly. Yeah,
so this sort of £1 million threshold is your lifestylers, the people that have bought a nice house in the country with a bit of land and they might grow a bit of hay and have a horse or a sheep, and they'll get a tax break on that. They're not producing food to any sort of level. And what the budget's done is completely missed the mark. It's gone straight down the middle, hit Mr. Average Farmer with a bill that's just totally unsustainable to carry on.
Why do you think that's happened? I mean, is your suspicion that the likes of Keir Starmer and some of his cabinet, who are all probably urbanites, just don't really understand farming?
It's either that they don't understand it at all, they've got the sums completely wrong, which again is a worry, or there's something really else going on that, they just think, well, let's try and level it up. Why should they have something that we've not got? Is there something bigger going on?
Well, what do you think? That they think that you're all kind of country bumpkins enjoying the great life? You're like from some kind of Harry Enfield sketch, making money off potatoes? I mean,
possibly, yeah. But what we have also heard as well that they're going to lose a lot of rural MPs in the next election, but because they've got such a big majority, they don't really mind. They're prepared to lose 100 over this.
But you say that. I mean, what are farmers actually saying? I know it's a bit of a way off. We've only just had an election. I'm thinking about that woman, not another one. But when it comes to voting next time round, I mean, farmers aren't going to vote Labour, are they?
No. And these sort of lower Labour MPs that have just come in, that have got a nice expense account, they've got to realise that they're there for their constituents. They're not working for the top. And there's sort of two levels within the Labour Party at the moment, and they need to realise, hold on a second, if we don't support our constituencies, we're only here for a few years, or maybe a snap election and we're gone. They need to start listening to their constituents. We saw it with the winter fuel allowance. When that vote went through, I know an MP that voted against it. It was too hard in his constituency, and they threw him out of the party. He now stands an independent, and this is what they're all scared of.
Interestingly, I don't know if I've got the quote in front of me, but a Labour peer has made the point that with the winter fuel allowance and now this IHT change for farmers, that Labour are in danger of becoming the cruel party. I mean, is that word being used by you and your colleagues?
They're encouraging suicide as well.
Which is more about that, like
technically illegal.
Yeah. What farmers saying? Look, I can't cope with the financial pressure this will bear.
Well, old people worry about everything.
Yeah.
Well, imagine you've worked. Your father's worked all his life, and then you've worked all your life. You're in your 70s or 80s. You've built up a farm to pass on to the next generation, because we don't do it for the money. We only do it for our kids. Everyone's motivated by looking after the children. Do that, and now by being alive before April 26, your lifetime's work and the generations before you is wasted. And when all you've got to look forward to is rotting in a care home, people are taking their lives. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
God, when you put it that starkly, this is when policy meets reality, right?
Yeah,
actual human beings.
There's live to provide for their children, and in the final hour, by a stupid change in legislation, could mean that a lifetime's work's wasted. There's so much anger and anguish within the industry at the moment, especially with the older generation.
What I find quite unbelievable is that there's no elected person that seems to be able to connect with the farmers. The person that has become the conduit between public and farmer has been Jeremy Clarkson, right? I mean, have any politicians engaged? I know the Tories are now sort of jumping on this. I mean, what do you...
Well, on our rally the other day, we had a lot of them turn up, and obviously Jeremy was there and he did speak to a lot of them. The problem is this deathly silence out of Labour and this party line. It's only going to affect 500 farms. Well, it's not. We know that's wrong. But even if it did, why is it acceptable to lose 500 farms a year?
No.
We just want to sit down, have a conversation with them, show them our sums, because we don't know where they got theirs from, and come up with a solution. If they want 500 million, we can find 500 million through somewhere else that won't damage the whole industry. If they put 1% on insurance tax, no one would probably even notice, but it'd give them billions, not 500 million. What is actually going on here?
So is there confidence in your movement that you could get them to U-turn on this? I know the National Farmers Union is obviously right down their throats trying to get to the table. There is a period of consultation, isn't there, about the thresholds? So is there room for manoeuvre here, do you think, Olly?
We've heard a whisper that they're re-looking at some things, but unless they're engaging with farmers or the NFU, they still could get it wrong, and they don't. It'd be embarrassing to get it wrong once. It's even worse embarrassing to get it wrong twice. But Rachel, if you're watching, Keir, if you're watching, come and meet with some farmers. Let's sit down. We'll show you the books. We'll show you the sums, and we'll try and find that solution.
No, Olly, I've had an idea. Rachel, Keir, we could hold a farmers forum on GB News if you were up for it. We could have the farming community, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and other key stakeholders. We just debate it out. What's there to be afraid of?
Well, exactly.
You'd take part, wouldn't you, Olly? Yeah. I'm quite happy to host. Just want to put that out there now.
It is a complicated subject, and, lot of stuff, someone said before about Twitter, you know, a lot of stuff does play out on the socials, but it's an hour or two sat down round the table with a notepad and doing real examples.
Crunching numbers.
Yeah.
Invite Dan Needle along. He seems to have crunched some numbers.
And that is our next sort of step, really, with this sort of wider business summit that are also affected by it, because you've got APR affecting farmers on the agricultural property, but you've got BPR destroying nearly every family business in the UK. And if we can bring all them together and start to give them facts and figures and...
Hang on, just a BPR...
Business property relief.
Thank you very much. Just so people understand.
Say if you own a hotel, how does that carry on if you've got to lose 20% of it?
Yeah.
You know, because everyone's got a tight margin these days, so to find that value is just not there. But if we have a business summit is probably the next step, and we bring them in and we start to gather the data of how many job losses that will come from this, then they might start to think, actually, we have got this wrong.
Well, also, I think from the public's perspective, the idea of food shortages are pretty scary. I mean, is that a realistic prospect?
We don't want to be going on strike just yet, but if they're not going to listen, that it's the only thing we've got left to do.
And Olly, finally, what about you personally and your farm? Have you got kids? What's your
I've got 3 children.
Yeah, okay.
So now I'm questioning what I'm doing every day, because there's no money. I think, well, I just may as well give up.
Well, what would you do instead? That's awful.
I don't
know. Want to be doing that.
I know, but when you get up in the morning and you're losing money growing wheat, and you think, well, I'm only doing it to provide for the next generation when hopefully farming might pick up, and now that is taken away from you, you just think, what's the point? I've been thinking that after the weather we've had this year.
Yeah, well, this is the other thing, and you learnt that if you didn't know anything about farming and you watched Clarkson's farm, just how difficult it is for farmers to make ends meet just on the basis of the climate alone.
This is it, and this is the difference between it and every other business. You know, some of the other business, yes, they will get hit by BPR, but they have the ability to change their pricing structure, or they could take an insurance policy out and put a couple of quid on everything they do and save some money up. We can't do that, farming. We are the only industry that's price takers, not price setters. All
right, well, look, the GB News audience is behind you. We've got other hosts behind you, including Nigel Farage, who I know was in his wellies at the rally. And we'll keep up the fight on your behalf. But, Olly, thank you very much for coming in and sort of talking us through the reality of this, because I think people are a bit disconnected from it, and you've made it very, very real on the show this morning. So thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Cheers.